What's up, Truth? This is Ben, and we're back with another video. Today it's shoulders and a little bit of biceps and the Apostolic Fathers and kind of early church history in general. Now we're going to talk about a couple things, but as usual, well, not as usual, well, as usual if you consider my last video, we're going to talk about warming up, because one of the bad things that I see happening is people going to the gym and they shoot a bunch of pre-workout in and they go, all right, let's get it! And then they go straight into working out and they don't warm up at all. Now, I didn't warm up as much here as I usually do because, as you can see, I'm not at the gym. I was at home with my kids, have 3 of them. They're all sick. My wife wasn't home. So I'm working out in the bathroom. And I don't want to hear any complaining from people who have excuses about how they can't get to the gym because I just can't find the time to get there. Well, everybody has a bathroom or a living room or at least a room of some kind that they can go to and work out in some way, shape, or form. So, yeah, I mean, save the excuses. I mean, you know, I'm not saying you have to have a 6-pack, because I definitely don't, but, I mean, you can get something in. So make sure that you warm up at least the body part that you're going to work out. Now, I'm going to be doing shoulders today, and I didn't have a lot of time today, and that's okay. You don't have to have a lot of time. You can get one in here and there, but make sure you work out a lot of things. Now, if you're doing shoulders, obviously you want to get your shoulders warmed up, and I'm also doing a little bit of biceps. I like to do shoulders and biceps together, but also do biceps on back day as well. And I usually do my traps on back day because I like to get traps because, well, they are part of your shoulders, but they're also part of your back because they start on your shoulders. If you're looking at it from the front, obviously you can see the traps on the sides, but it actually kind of runs in a V taper down the back of your back and kind of meets in your spine, so it goes all the way down. So I typically do those on back day. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to warm up for a little bit, but we're also going to talk about the Apostolic Fathers for a minute. Now, the reason we're going to talk about the Apostolic Fathers is because, well, there's a lot of abuse of the Apostolic Fathers. And by abuse, I mean severe misuse. Now, I started off with shoulder raises, and I didn't do too much weight. I think I had maybe 10 here. I'm not sure exactly how much it is. I had these are just weights I got as a present, and they're the select one, kind of like the Bowflex ones where I get the turns, but not as expensive. But it's still weight, so it doesn't matter. And so I'll do a couple of side raises, typical, and then I will do a side raise that's a little different. So you're, instead of just raising to your sides with your arms almost straight and extended, you'll do where you're trying to almost pull your elbows up first. It's a different movement. It targets the same muscle, but just in a different way. So that's always good to do. And then, like I said, I'll get some biceps in. So I can hit biceps twice a week, because the biceps aren't a huge muscle, so you can actually work them more than once a week if you want to. So like I said, I'll usually throw them in a few times a week, so I don't have to work them as hard because of how small the muscle group is. And I'll get them on back day as well. So I'm getting a few of those in. This is just a starter set, like I said, so not a whole lot going on. And this is a superset. A superset, for those of you who don't know, is when you're working 2 body parts usually at the same time. So a lot of times people will superset biceps and triceps, or they'll do, you know, chest and calves, or whatever your split is. I usually do a 4-day split. So I'm just ramping up the weight here. But anyways, so let's talk about the Apostolic Fathers for a minute, because I see a lot of abuse when it comes to the Apostolic Fathers. Now, typically what happens is people don't understand who the Apostolic Fathers were. They don't understand the time frame that they lived in. They don't understand history in general. They don't know how to interpret primary source documentation. So what they'll do is they'll go to the Apostolic Fathers, and the Apostolic Fathers are generally just considered to be the people who came, the generation after the Apostles is usually who they are. So when that ends, it's a matter of historic debate, but typically people who knew the Apostles in some way, shape, or form, or at least who were alive when they were alive and passed away later. People like Clement of Rome, I think Ignatius and Irenaeus might be in that. Polycarp is one of them. Polycarp, a disciple of John, the Apostle John. So that person would be considered an Apostolic Father. Now, what happens with the Apostolic Fathers and just early church fathers in general, and how far you want to push that dating, again, is up for debate. Some people will argue, 6th century, 7th century. I think 8th century, maybe the 800s, people will say those were kind of the early church fathers. Is the farthest that you can push that. I don't know if I'd go too much further than the 5th century. Obviously, Augustine belongs in there. But yeah, it's a matter of kind of debate among historians. But one of the problems is that people will say, okay, they'll have an idea, like, obviously my channel, I've been talking a lot about Calvinism versus Arminianism, or Calvinism versus Provisionism. And one thing that comes up is people go, well, the Apostolic Fathers or the early church fathers were universally in agreement that free will and the provisionist viewpoint was the only viewpoint that could be promoted on the planet, and they were all in agreement. And I'm going to show you these single quotes out of context to prove my point. Now, the problem with that is that anytime anybody says, well, the early church was all in agreement about this, or all in agreement about that, or everybody was universally in agreement about ABC, XYZ, typically doesn't know what they're talking about, and they're abusing history. And side note, as you can see from the video, I've moved on to rear delts. Now, your rear delts obviously are your back shoulders, in layman's terms, and they're not a massive muscle, and I don't do a lot of weight on them, and you don't want to do a whole lot, because what you'll end up doing is you'll end up putting your traps into it too much, and then your rear delts won't get any work, and you want your rear delts to actually get worked. And so I'll do, like I said, like side, or not side, kind of rear raises. I'll do it one angle, I'll do it the other angle, I'll do the one where I just mentioned, where I kind of pull my shoulders back, and you do a few sets of those. You don't need a whole lot because it's not a huge muscle. And then, like I said, I'll get a couple of biceps in. So, you got the free weights here. I like the easy curl bar is really good, because I like when my wrists are facing in. If they're facing out, or sometimes if I do too much weight on just like a regular bench bar or lifting bar, then it kind of hurts my wrists and my forearms. So I like doing them like this, a couple of different angles. But anyways, like I was saying, yeah, people will abuse them, take them out of context, and they will go back to the early church fathers, the Apostolic Fathers, and they will try to find their viewpoint in those men. And that's just a ridiculous thing to do, because those men weren't fighting and arguing against or for the same things that we were. So if you go back and you say, I'm a provisionist, or I'm a Calvinist, and I need to go back and find my position in the early church, well, that doesn't always work out, because it's not a one-to-one comparison, because times are different. They weren't facing the same issues we are. That's why when people, for instance, if you see a Reformed theologian and a Roman Catholic debating, both of them can go back and look at Augustine, right? And they can go, see, Augustine supports the Roman Catholic Church because of this statement. And then a Calvinist or Reformed theologian will go, well, yeah, he actually doesn't believe that because of this statement. And the problem is that both of them are kind of right and kind of wrong. Why? Well, because of the time that Augustine lived at. Well, who was the Augustine debating? Right? The Donatists. What was his argument? What is he fighting against? What was he fighting for? So we need to make sure that we're careful and we don't misuse or abuse the early church fathers in order to prove a point in the 21st century in America. And as you can see, I'm doing some bicep curls here. Now, this is just a little bit different. This is more of a, when I do this, I feel it more in my forearms, and it's kind of a shoulder thing, actually. It's still biceps, but it's a little bit of biceps, forearms, triceps. It's just a different movement. I'm a big fan of different movements. I don't like doing just like standard, like if you go to a video, everybody, or you go to a gym, there'll be like the gym bros, which I am one. Obviously, I'm a gym bro, just a regular dude who works out. I know more than most people, but not as much as experts. Kind of like a church bro, right? I know more than most people, not as much as the experts. And that kind of that in-between layman thing. Excuse me. And so yeah, I like to come across the body. It's just something different. I've started incorporating different movements, different hand positions, things where I use more than one body part at a time or several muscle groups at a time. There's just, in terms of functionality, it's really good. Like a deadlift is obviously for your lower back, but it takes your entire body, your hamstrings and your glutes, because you're pivoting backwards and you have to pull upwards. It's such an intense movement. It's really good. So looking back to the early church fathers, apostolic fathers, let's make sure we don't abuse them and take them out of their proper context, right? He was a man of his time is a very relevant argument, because those people lived in those times, and we don't want to take them out of their time and try to put them into our time and use them as if they just lived 2 or 3 decades ago. Even theologians who lived 2 or 3 decades ago weren't necessarily arguing about in the exact same way that we might argue about. And that last rip was rough. Okay, anyways, him do a few more curls here, and then we're going to move on to some front delts. And like I said, this wasn't a long workout. I think I was in there maybe 30 minutes, and I think everybody can do this. It's really not that hard. You can work out and talk about church history at the same time. Many a times I've listened to a podcast or a lecture or a series on church history or a relevant topic while I've been getting swole in the gym. You can do both. Now, usually, obviously, I listen to music because that helps, but you can do both. And I think it's very important for everybody to do at least some physical activity of some kind. Now, I'm 35, just turned 35. So I'm kind of in that in-between stage where, you're almost middle-aged, you're almost over the hill, but not quite. But you're not young anymore, you're not in your 20s. And your body just doesn't heal like it used to. So you need to stay fresh. You kind of need to, stay a little active. But you also need to stay active in the knowledge of church history. And that's something that is severely lacking in the church, especially in the online quote-unquote Christian community. I've encountered so many people online when in my videos where I've been talking about church history and scripture and the past, and people are just absolutely clueless because they watched or listened to some person or some guy or some expert who told them ABC, XYZ about the 2nd century, 3rd century, 1st century. They said, see, the whole early church believed this. They all were in agreement about this. And you're like, that's ridiculous. That's impossible. I mean, if you were to go, the entire Christian church in the 21st century today is in agreement about A, B, C, X, Y, Z, you'd be like, what are you, insane? Of course they're not. Just go to Google or YouTube and Google or search any topic within the church, and there are fractures, schisms, splintered groups, and it's been like that since the beginning of time. So let's just be a little bit more careful with our language and our grammar. Let's be a little bit more timid about our claims about the past, and let's make sure that we categorize things in the way they're supposed to be. If you're talking about a period in church history, you can go, well, most of the people in this time believed this in this area, or a large group of the population in this area were in agreement about this topic because of this issue. That'd be a better way to say that. So I hope this has helped, guys. I'm going to have an outro here in a second, but like I said, stay motivated, work out, get it in. You don't have to have a six-pack to work out on YouTube. You can just have a 35-year-old dad bod and still make engaging content. I hope this has been motivating. All right, here comes the outro. All right, thanks for tuning in into this impromptu shoulder mini bicep workout. I don't want to hear any excuses about how I can't get to the gym or I don't have time to work out. I did all this in about 30 minutes. As you can see, I'm home in my bathroom that has about 4 different colors of paint because we ripped everything out. There's no tub in here, it's just the toilet. So there's no excuse not to at least get some physical activity in. And that's why I've moved to doing more than one body part a day. I mean, one of the big things is because I have children, so I just don't have as much free time. But also, as you get older, I just turned 35 last week. You need a little more time to recover than you used to when you were 19. So yeah, I mean, you don't have to do everything standard every single time. It doesn't have to be perfect or set in stone. That thing I did at the end, where I'm just lifting the weight in front of me, I just came up with that right now. It's not me came up with it, I didn't invent it. And I've done other things with barbells with a lighter grip, but I thought, let's try this. You can do supersets, you can double up on things. So like I said, there's no excuse not to at least get some physical activity in, just to help you stay briefly young, a little bit young. You don't want to fall apart when you're in your 30s and 40s, because it gets harder and harder to build muscle as you get older. I also hope you enjoyed me clarifying in the audio as I talked over this about the early church fathers and the Apostolic fathers. There's a lot of ignorance surrounding those men, and a lot of abuse surrounding those men. People don't really understand how to study history, unfortunately. They don't know how to let men be who they were. If you've ever heard the time of his main argument, well, that's a very good argument that you should be aware of, because there will be one day when people look back at us and they look at us and judge us and say, well, they were men or women of the 21st century. So don't look at them in a way you wouldn't want somebody else to look at you 1,000 years from now, if the earth is still around. Pretty swole right now. Side note, always film from above so you look less fat. Alright guys, hope this has helped. We'll see you in the next one. Woo. Take care. Quit being a weenie.